You ever notice how strange it feels when everything suddenly goes quiet? One day, your phone lights up with messages, laughter, and validation, and the next, it's just stillness. No calls, no notifications, no one checking in. And that silence? It's uncomfortable. It feels like rejection wearing a mask of calm. You start wondering if something's broken, if something's over. But here's the truth that most people never realize. Silence isn't the end. It's the test. It's the space where real emotional strength begins to reveal itself. Because silence isn't empty. It's full of meaning. It's a mirror that reflects who you really are when the noise disappears. When two people stop talking, something profound begins to happen. One starts to chase, to overthink, to panic. The other breathes deeper, thinks clearer, and begins to see the truth. And that's the moment the power shifts. The one who remains calm in silence doesn't lose. They evolve. See, we live in an age that fears silence. We've been trained to fill every gap with noise, music, texts, scrolling, updates, anything to escape being alone with our own thoughts. Relationships have become extensions of that addiction. Every ping, every reply, every seen message becomes proof that we still matter. But when communication stops, all those illusions fall apart. The space you once filled with messages becomes empty, and suddenly that emptiness starts to echo. And in that echo, you start to hear the truth you've been avoiding. That's where Stoicism comes in, not as a cold philosophy, but as a practice of balance. The Stoic doesn't fear silence. He uses it. He understands that silence is not the absence of love, it's the presence of self-awareness. It's the art of knowing when to speak and when to let time speak for you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best answer to anger is silence." And he was right. Not because silence punishes the other person, but because it protects your peace. When you stop contacting someone and they stop contacting you, the game doesn't end. It transforms. It's no longer about who cares more, it's about who understands themselves better. Your mind will start to test you. You'll feel that itch to reach out, to break the silence, to get some sign that you still matter. That's your ego begging for attention. It's the part of you that fears being unseen. But beneath that noise, your peace is whispering. It's telling you to wait, to breathe, to let go of control. Because when you stop chasing, you create space for clarity to arrive. Most people lose that battle. They confuse stillness with weakness. They think staying silent means giving up. But silence, when chosen with awareness, is power in disguise. It's restraint. It's emotional discipline. The person who can stay still while their emotions scream for reaction, that's the one who truly understands strength. Let's look deeper into what happens psychologically when contact stops. Your brain is wired to seek patterns and predict outcomes. When that pattern of daily communication, validation, and connection is suddenly broken, your brain panics. It starts asking questions that spiral into anxiety. Did I do something wrong? Are they losing interest? Did they find someone else? That uncertainty feeds your ego's need for control. The ego doesn't like silence because silence can't be controlled. But your peace? It thrives there. When you don't react, you interrupt that cycle. You give yourself room to observe instead of obsess. You start to realize that the silence you're sitting in is not a punishment. It's a pause. It's giving both people the space to see what really exists beyond habit and emotion. And in that pause, truth surfaces. Because here's what most people never admit. Sometimes communication keeps things alive that were already dead. Silence just makes you face it. And if the other person truly values you, your silence won't be mistaken for indifference. It will be felt as absence. They'll start to sense what's missing, not because you're manipulating them, but because energy leaves a mark. When your attention, your presence, your care suddenly vanishes, it creates a vacuum. That vacuum forces reflection. It makes them question what they lost, what they took for granted. But if you rush back into communication, you rob them of that realization. You rescue them from the very lesson they needed to learn. This is where the Stoic mindset separates itself from emotional chaos. The Stoic doesn't chase validation because he understands that everything temporary, attention, attraction, connection, comes and goes. What matters is the ability to remain steady through those fluctuations. You can't control how someone feels about you, but you can control how you respond to their silence. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That's the essence of emotional maturity. When communication fades, your reaction defines your peace. Do you let anxiety dictate your next move, or do you let discipline lead you toward clarity? Because every message you don't send, every urge you resist, every moment you sit in silence and choose self-respect, you're training your mind. You're teaching it that peace feels better than panic. Let me be clear. This doesn't mean indifference. It doesn't mean playing games or pretending not to care. It means understanding that not every feeling needs to be expressed, not every question needs an answer, and not every distance needs to be closed. Sometimes, silence does the work words never could. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for a connection is to let it breathe. But here's where most people fail. They let silence become a weapon. They stop communicating to punish the other person, to provoke a reaction. That's not Stoicism. That's ego disguised as discipline. True silence comes from a place of acceptance, not control. You're not ignoring someone to make them chase you. You're allowing distance so that truth can reveal itself. And in that truth, you'll find one of two things. Either the bond was real enough to survive the quiet, or it was built on noise that couldn't. Both answers are valuable, because either you regain peace with them, or you rediscover peace within yourself. The hardest part of this process is the waiting. Silence stretches time. Days start to feel longer because your mind keeps replaying what once was. You'll feel the urge to break the silence just to feel something again, to remind yourself that you still exist in their world. But don't. That emptiness you feel isn't loneliness, it's withdrawal from dependency, from external validation, from noise. The same way the body craves sugar after you quit it, your mind craves attention when you stop seeking it. Give it time. Eventually, that craving turns into calm. And while you wait, shift your focus. Silence doesn't mean doing nothing. It means redirecting your energy. The same energy you use to pour into conversations, into waiting for replies, into hoping for validation. Pour that into yourself. Work out. Read, learn something new. Build something that outlasts the temporary. Because every minute you spend improving yourself, you're reminding your mind that life doesn't stop when someone stops texting you. Life expands when you stop shrinking for attention. There's something magnetic about a person who's content in silence. People feel that energy. When you no longer need validation, you become the source of it. That's when the dynamic begins to change. They start to wonder, why isn't he reaching out? Did he move on? Was I the one who needed him more than I thought? That curiosity begins to work in silence, the same way your anxiety once did. But here's the twist. You're no longer attached to the outcome. You're no longer waiting for their response to define your peace. That's the real transformation. Because Stoicism isn't about detaching from people, it's about detaching from control. You can love someone deeply and still choose silence if communication no longer serves peace. You can care and still step back. You can miss someone and still not chase. That's maturity. That's power. And what happens when you embody that stillness? You become grounded. You stop reacting to every emotional wave. You start observing. You start responding only when it aligns with your peace. The silence that once felt unbearable becomes comforting. You realize that solitude isn't emptiness. It's clarity. It's the space where you meet yourself again. Think about it. How many times have you reached out not because you truly wanted to connect, but because you couldn't handle the unknown? You wanted control over the narrative, a sense of certainty. But certainty built on fear always collapses. True confidence is built in uncertainty, in learning to stand still when everything around you feels unstable. That's the heart of this entire message. Silence isn't about ignoring someone. It's about hearing yourself. When the talking stops, your inner dialogue gets louder. You start noticing how dependent your peace was on their presence. You start realizing how much of your self-worth was tied to their attention. That realization hurts, but it also frees you. Because the moment you see it, you can change it. So what do you do with this silence? You use it as fuel. You let it shape you. Every moment you resist the urge to reach out, you strengthen your emotional muscle. Every time you choose calm over chaos, you prove to yourself that peace isn't something people give you, it's something you create. And as days turn into weeks, something subtle begins to shift. The silence that once scared you starts to feel familiar. You begin to prefer it. You begin to see how much mental noise you used to tolerate. You start appreciating the calm. That's when growth becomes real. Because growth isn't loud, it's quiet. It happens in moments of reflection, not reaction. And when that growth begins, others notice. They feel the difference in your energy. It's no longer scattered, desperate, or needy. It's composed, it's present. And that presence, ironically, is what draws people back. But this time, you don't chase their attention. You choose who enters your peace. The silence has taught you something that words never could. Your value doesn't disappear when someone stops noticing you. It was never theirs to validate. It was yours to remember. And maybe someday, communication resumes. Maybe they reach out. Maybe they don't. But by then, you'll realize it doesn't matter as much as you thought it did, because the silence already gave you what you were looking for all along. Clarity. The person who can stay silent in a world that constantly screams for attention doesn't just survive heartbreak, they transcend it. Because silence, when embraced with wisdom, doesn't separate you from the world. It connects you to yourself. That's where we'll pause for now. But understand this, the silence you're sitting in isn't empty. It's full of lessons waiting to unfold. What you do with it next determines whether it breaks you or builds you. And that's where the real journey begins. When you've sat in silence long enough, something powerful begins to shift inside you. The noise of craving, of wanting to be seen, starts to fade. You begin to realize that peace isn't something you wait for, it's something you build. The stillness that once felt heavy starts to feel like home. You stop replaying the past. You stop obsessing over what they're thinking. Instead, your focus turns inward, towards something far more important, yourself. The silence becomes a teacher. It shows you how much of your energy was wasted trying to control things you were never meant to control. You begin to see that most of the chaos in your life didn't come from others. It came from your own resistance to let go. Stoicism teaches that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And you start to see how true that is, because the longer you stay quiet, the clearer you notice how many of your worries were just stories created by your mind. In that stillness, you stop asking, what if they don't come back? And start asking, who am I becoming in their absence? That's the real transformation. The silence reveals the areas of your life that were neglected when all your energy went into someone else. Your fitness, your goals, your peace, your purpose, all the parts of you that got dimmed in the noise of attachment begin to surface again. And this is where you start to rebuild. Not out of spite, not to prove anything, but out of understanding. You start focusing on the one thing you can control, yourself. You begin to move with purpose again. The gym sessions become more consistent, not because you're trying to show off your progress online, but because you've remembered that your body and mind deserve your care. You start reading again, learning, expanding, because you realize that silence creates mental space, and that space can either be filled with anxiety or growth. Every small step adds up. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, peace over panic, you're rewiring yourself. You're teaching your mind that you no longer operate on emotional impulse. You operate on direction. That's the essence of Stoicism. Control the inner world, and the outer world begins to fall into place. But make no mistake, silence doesn't mean life becomes easy. There will be moments where loneliness creeps in, where memories hit harder than expected. You'll miss the sound of their voice. You'll miss the comfort of their presence. But in those moments, remember this: discomfort is the birthplace of strength. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this: and you will find strength. That's what silence gives you, the power to stop chasing what's out of reach and start mastering what's within. So when those waves of loneliness come, don't run from them. Sit with them. Let them pass through you without resistance. Because every wave that hits and doesn't drown you makes you stronger. It's proof that you can endure, and with every passing day, you'll notice how your need to be understood by others begins to fade. You stop explaining yourself. You stop justifying your choices. You stop needing closure from anyone who walked away. That's the moment silence turns from being a void into being a fortress. It's not emptiness anymore, it's protection. You begin to understand that peace isn't found in constant connection, it's found in selective energy. You no longer allow everyone access to your emotions. You no longer respond to every message, every call, every invitation that doesn't serve your peace. You start valuing your time the way you once valued theirs. This shift doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. There's a difference between being heartless and being centered. Stoicism doesn't teach you to suppress your feelings, it teaches you to master them. Feel everything, but act on reason. Love deeply, but without attachment. Care genuinely, but without losing yourself. That balance, that's real strength. And ironically, that's when people begin to return, not because you chase them, but because energy speaks louder than words. When you stop broadcasting your pain and start radiating peace, people feel that shift. It's magnetic. They sense something has changed, something they can't quite explain. They start to wonder what you've found in the silence that they haven't. That curiosity draws them back. But here's the beautiful part. You no longer need them to stay. Because now, your peace isn't built on their presence. This is where most people misunderstand power. Power isn't about control over others, it's control over yourself. When you don't react out of fear or desperation, when you can sit in uncertainty without breaking, that's power. The one who can stay calm when others crumble is always in control of the situation, even if they say nothing. Silence becomes the loudest language in the room, and when they finally reach out, because often they do, you won't respond from the same place you once did. You won't be searching for validation or closure. You'll be calm, grounded, detached. You'll listen, not with longing, but with understanding. And you'll realize something profound. The silence already gave you the closure you were waiting for. You no longer need their words to confirm your worth. Because through the quiet, you've learned that peace is not found in getting answers. It's found in no longer needing them. You've learned that love isn't about holding on, it's about letting go with grace. And most importantly, you've learned that silence was never about losing them, it was about finding yourself. When you live in alignment with that, everything changes. You stop forcing conversations that don't flow naturally. You stop explaining your value to people who choose not to see it. You stop needing to prove your worth through effort. You simply exist in your truth, and those meant for you will naturally align with it. Those who aren't will fade away quietly, and for the first time, you'll be at peace with the four. This is the moment when silence turns from temporary pause to permanent wisdom. You start appreciating solitude not as loneliness, but as strength. You begin to love your own company, to see it as a sanctuary. You understand that being alone doesn't mean being empty. It means being whole. And from that place, relationships take on a new form. You no longer approach them from a place of need, but from abundance. You don't seek someone to fill a void. You seek someone to share your peace with. And when you interact from that energy, love stops being a battlefield and becomes a partnership. Because you're no longer fighting for attention, you're giving from stability. That's what Stoicism in love truly means. It's not detachment for the sake of pride, it's detachment for the sake of clarity. It's the ability to stay calm in love and loss, to understand that people come and go, but your peace should remain constant. You begin to live with a quiet confidence, a sense that whatever happens, you'll handle it. Whatever leaves, you'll release it. Whatever stays, you'll nurture it without fear. And eventually, you'll look back at the silence that once scared you and realize It saved you. It stripped away illusions, exposed weaknesses, and rebuilt your strength. It showed you that you don't need constant validation to know your worth. It taught you that real power lies in restraint, that self-respect often speaks louder than any words could. So the next time the talking stops, don't panic. Don't overthink. Don't chase. Let it breathe. Let the silence work for you. Because silence doesn't end stories. It reveals them. It shows you who was genuine and who was temporary. It teaches you where to place your energy and where to pull it back. And above all, remember this. Silence is not emptiness. It's transformation. It's the space between the person you were and the person you're becoming. If you can master that space, if you can stay still while your emotions beg for reaction, then nothing and no one will ever have power over you again. So breathe. Stay silent. Let peace do the talking. Because when you stop reaching out, you don't lose control, you reclaim it. And in that stillness, you'll find something more valuable than any message, any call, or any validation. You'll find yourself. And maybe someday communication resumes. Maybe they reach out, maybe they don't. But by then, you'll realize it doesn't matter as much as you thought it did. Because the silence already gave you what you were looking for all along. Clarity. The person who can stay silent in a world that constantly screams for attention doesn't just survive heartbreak, they transcend it. Because silence, when embraced with wisdom, doesn't separate you from the world. It connects you to yourself. That's where we'll pause for now. But understand this, the silence you're sitting in isn't empty. It's full of lessons waiting to unfold. What you do with it next determines whether it breaks you or builds you. And that's where the real journey begins.